It is the July 18 edition of PFT OT. We're just 1 week away from the return of PFT Live after a 5-week hiatus. I wish it was ending today. I kind of wish it never actually started. Maybe a day off here or there, maybe a week. 5 weeks, more than I needed, more than I wanted, and more than many of you wanted, because I am hearing more and more as we get closer and closer to the 25th. When are you guys going to be back? And I think some people know the answer. I think they just want to ask the question to vent that we're not there. And look, I appreciate it. I know that we're part of your routine, and we hope to be back in our routine of helping you set your routine ASAP. More specifically, 7 days from now, PFT Live, back on Peacock, Sirius XM 85, Sky Sports, podcast, etc. Until then, let's get things rolling. And yes, the slow time is over. I wrote about that earlier today at PFT. A couple of teams have their rookies reporting today, the Raiders and the Bills. By the end of the week, there'll be 6 teams, I think, that are up and running. By next Tuesday, everyone will be going. It is done. It is over. We have gotten through the period of time where there isn't as much news happening, but there's still plenty of news that happens. And here's the bottom line. It slows down, but people still want to know what's happening. This is the time of year where people watch and wait and worry. Is there reason to be concerned about my favorite team? Is there reason to feel good about my favorite team? Is something going to happen in the months of May and June and the middle of July that caused me to feel differently, good, bad, or otherwise? People who are all in with their favorite teams, people who follow the NFL on a religious and zealous basis, never want it to slow down. They want to know what's happening at all times. And again, as I said earlier, it's part of people's routines. You want to check the websites. Hopefully PFT is one of them. The Twitter feeds. Hopefully ours is one of them. What is happening in the NFL? Watching, waiting, hoping for that team to get better or that team to not get a lot worse. Remains to be seen how much better the Vikings will be in 2022. We did a mailbag yesterday on PFT, and one of the questions was, what are the teams in each conference that could basically fall anywhere? They could be horrible, they could be great, they could be at any point in between. And the Vikings are one of the teams that stand out to me in the NFC, primarily because of the potentially improved offense. It's kind of a weird thing to see a new GM and a new head coach come into a team that doesn't have a significant, dramatic personnel overhaul in year one, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Now, the defense is changing from a base 4-3 to a 3-4, and those looks change all the time with nickel and dime packages, et cetera. And who knows what the defense is going to be? Can't be much worse than it's been the past couple of years. The offense is really the question, because you think about the way it's gone under Mike Zimmer. And this is why, all due respect to defensive coaches out there and defensive coordinators aspiring to become head coaches, I'm a firm believer in hiring an offensive head coach, because if you have any success as a team and your head coach is a defensive guy, you're going to lose your offensive coordinator. He's going to be gone. He's going to be a head coach somewhere else. If your head coach is an offensive guy, he's the one that becomes bound at the hip with the quarterback. Together, they work through years of success. And as the team does well and assistant coaches get opportunities elsewhere, the guy who is making the offense go ultimately stays put. Look at the Rams. Sean McVay stays put. Zach Taylor gets a head coaching job. Kevin O'Connell gets a head coaching job. The head coach is still there, tied at the hip with the quarterback of the team. So, with Mike Zimmer gone after a revolving door of offensive coordinators, either fired or quit or promoted to head coaching jobs, now, for the first time in a decade, the Vikings have an offensive head coach. And when you consider how the offense struggled in recent years, but still was pretty damn potent and has some great weapons in Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. They expect a lot of Irv Smith, who had a knee injury last year that impacted him dramatically. KJ Osborne has had his moments. Kirk Cousins, when everything goes well, that's the narrative. When everything goes well, he can get it done. It's only when things start to crumble that it all falls apart. Well, now that you've got better coaching offensively, maybe things go well more often. Maybe that play that crumbled was the result of a bad play call, a bad audible, a bad decision before the snap, not something that happens after the snap. We know what the limitations are of Kirk Cousins. He's not going to run around like Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers. When the walls close in, it's done. So you try to engineer situations where the walls close in fewer times than they did in the past. And this is all about self-scouting. I remember when the Vikings got to this brink of the Super Bowl 2017 and got blown out by the Eagles. One of the concessions made by Zimmer after the game was, we kind of learn when we get this deep into the postseason, you have to spend a lot more time figuring out your own tendencies. Words to that effect. Look, that is an active, constant process that should happen all year long. It shouldn't be you get to the postseason and say, gee, we've got 17 regular season games of film out there. Somebody may use that against us. No, you've got to assume that they're using it against you every week, all the time, and you have to constantly stay ahead of it. And that's what I think Kevin O'Connell and this offense will do. And that could lead to good things for the Vikings this year. We'll see. They could, as I've said, go anywhere from NFC Championship all the way down to third or fourth place in the division. Who knows? But the offense is going to be a big part of that. And that's why when I saw the recent comments from receiver Justin Jefferson to Complex Sports that he regards Devontae Adams as the top receiver in the league right now, but next year he intends to be that guy. Yes, it's the normal glass half full bravado. And if you don't have that confidence in yourself, who else is going to have that confidence in you? And that's just the way you got to be wired to survive, not just thrive, but survive in the NFL. You have to have a high degree of confidence in yourself. Chase Claypool recently said he views himself as a top 3 receiver, and he got dragged by a lot of people for it. Look, you need to have that. And maybe talent-wise, he's got the ability. We just need to see it blossom. We know Jefferson is already one of the top receivers, and he was one of the top receivers on a team that had kind of a basic meat and potatoes, old school offense. That's one of the things that Jefferson said not that long ago. Spoke to Jory Epstein of USA Today during offseason workouts, how different the offense is going to be, how dynamic it's going to be. We talked to Justin Jefferson at the Super Bowl after Kevin O'Connell got the job. He's going to be the Cooper Kupp in that offense. And you look back at last year and you look at the week-to-week performance, it isn't going to take much for Jefferson to be what Kupp was in that Rams offense. So you take a guy who's already one of the best receivers in the NFL with an offense that left plenty to be desired. You pump up that offense. You create more opportunities. All of a sudden, Vikings have the ultimate good problem to have, where after this season, they're going to be paying Justin Jefferson $30 million a year, and he will have earned it potentially. If he stays healthy and if it goes the way he thinks, could be a magical season for him. And as Ben Lieber said to Zach Zelb of CBS Sports Radio, which kind of kicked off this whole topic for me on Sunday, the defense was crap the past couple of years. The offense wasn't horrible. The offense stays where it was or gets a little bit better, and the defense just improves a little bit. And this is a playoff team in a wide open NFC where you've got the Bucks, the Rams, and the Packers, and then kind of everybody else. Somebody from the NFC East is going to make it by winning the division. Eagles, Cowboys, who knows? But you got those 3 wild card spots now wide open. And it's not unreasonable to think, even with a first-year GM and head coach, the Vikings can get one of them because of the talent they have and the new approach that will happen offensively. In the AFC, the Texans aren't expected to do much this year, but the good news is they have avoided what would be a potential season-long distraction, and maybe longer than that, maybe a lot longer than that, because the word came on Friday, late afternoon. And this is the benefit of the late Friday afternoon news dump, because I doubt there's a whole lot of talk about this on Monday morning, which is exactly what the Texans wanted. They reached an agreement with not 1, but 30 Deshaun Watson accusers. 1 person had sued the Texans. 30 have settled with the Texans. 1 fell swoop, 30 deals done, case is over. No holdouts. Everybody agreed to the offer the Texans made, whatever it may be. So before the cases even really get started, the case is end. Now, an answer to the 1 complaint that was filed against the Texans would have been due in a week or so. And even though the Texans issued a statement saying they had no knowledge of the alleged misconduct of Deshaun Watson, we know what Watson's already testified to. When he had some threatening comments made to him that someone was going to expose him via social media, and he told the team's director of security about it, the director of security didn't figure out what the hell was going on and how do we stop this? How do we protect ourselves and the team and the player and anyone else out there who may think that Deshaun Watson has done something for which he could be exposed? No. The director of security, according to Watson, testifying under oath, gave Watson an NDA to use for these encounters. So I suspect that at the very top of the Texans organization, this was a surprise. But the problem is you appoint someone your director of security and that person's out there doing things on behalf of your team. Doesn't matter if he's operating beyond the boundaries of what he was supposed to do. He did it. I think one thing to watch in the aftermath of all this, how much longer does that director of security remain with the team before he leaves to pursue other interests? My guess is that Cal McNair, the owner of the team, not thrilled with the fact that they got dragged into this because of the way they handled it when it all first hit their radar screen, specifically their director of security's radar screen. So they say they didn't know. Ownership didn't know. The director of security did. And what he did in response to that was enough to get the Texans into a jackpot for which they had to write eventually 30 checks to make these claims go away. And that's what Deshaun Watson should have done from the get-go. Settle these cases early. Avoid them becoming a major distraction and a major issue and a major risk of a potential verdict. Now, the Texans would have had some strong defenses. We've talked about this before. The threshold argument would have been, we have no legal duty. Nothing we did supersedes the criminal misconduct of Deshaun Watson. We have no duty to protect the public at large from a guy's criminal misconduct. Now, they would have tried to tie together everything the team knew and everything they did to facilitate these encounters, providing a room at the Houstonian hotel for Deshaun Watson's use, providing a massage table. But still, at what point are the Texans required to connect the dots and say, maybe he's doing some things during these massages that cross the line with others, and maybe somehow we're responsible? I mean, if the guy's not criminally charged, what are the Texans even protecting them from? A potential civil claim that they would have against him for taking things a little too far? So it would have been a tough case. But the Texans would have had to deal with it. They would have had to answer the complaint. They would have had to address whether or not their director of security supplied Deshaun Watson with NDAs. It just would have been a big mess. So whatever the number, it was enough to get all 30 to say, we will accept, we will resolve our claims, and we move forward. Now, will we ever know what the number was? Was it the same for all 30? We won't know. And there'll be confidentiality agreements in place to keep the individual plaintiffs from saying what they got. But as I said when 20 settled with Deshaun Watson, if it really is the same number across the board, and I assume that for one of the 30, there would be sufficient curiosity to say, hey, are we all getting the same amount? Now, maybe the response is, doesn't matter. But I would want to know. I would want to know, wait a minute, somebody's getting more than me. Why are they getting more than me? So let's just assume they all got the same amount. And I think that's a safe assumption, although I have no inside knowledge on that. Not that I ever do. If all got the same amount and they all know it, it makes it easier for one of them to blab. Because when 30 people have the information, you can just say it wasn't me. When you talk to a reporter who gives you anonymity and promises not to say who the source was, and reporters do that all the time, you're protected, you're safe. If it's one, we know who the leak was. If it's 30, good luck figuring it out. So unless there's some sort of a clause in there that if it gets out as to one, it will be regarded as a breach as to each, although I don't know if that would be enforceable in court, but maybe that's a way to scare them into not saying anything. That if anyone blabs, everyone potentially loses their settlement amount. Again, not enforceable, but it may be the thing that gets them all to not say what they got. And that's a significant bit of information. Don't you feel differently about the Texans and possibly Deshaun Watson's potential responsibility if it's a huge number than if it's just $50,000? Look, the Texans would have spent to defend 30 cases a lot of money. And plenty of businesses will look at threatened litigation or actual litigation as a business transaction. What's it going to cost us to defend ourselves all the way through to trial, even if we win? Okay, let's just offer that and be done with it. And if there aren't a lot of hard feelings involved, if no one's character is under attack, and I think it's one of the reasons why Deshaun Watson has resisted viewing these cases as a business transaction, if you can take personal feelings out of it, it becomes a much easier analysis. Hey, give me an estimate, General Counsel to the Houston Texans, of what it will cost us, start to finish, to defend ourselves against these 30 claims if they are filed against us. How much will it cost? Okay, let's just pay it and be done with it. We eliminate the distraction. We wipe out the risk of an adverse result. We buy certainty and make this all go away. If you can remove the personal feelings from it, it's a very easy business decision to make. And I think that's what they did. So I don't know, is it 100,000 a person? 50,000 a person? My guess, if I'm making a guess here, and it's just a guess, somewhere between 50 and 100 is where it landed for each of the 30. Now, next point. Will the NFL investigate the Texans under the personal conduct policy for settling 30 claims? 30 claims with individuals who made accusations, one of whom made specific accusations reduced to a lawsuit against the Texans. The other 29 would have had the same claims, presumably. What does the NFL do about it? Well, to little surprise, the NFL has not responded to a request for comment on whether or not a personal conduct policy investigation is happening as to the Texans. And the Texans didn't respond to a request for comment as to whether or not the league is investigating. But that's the way it's supposed to work, isn't it? The teams don't investigate themselves. The commissioner said so back in February when this delayed reaction investigation happened with the Washington Commanders. And Daniel Snyder wanted to do his own investigation. The commissioner said at his Super Bowl press conference, no, that's not how it works. Teams don't investigate themselves. We investigate the teams. See, the league's in a tough spot with these investigations. And I think the league realizes that that sentence we've discussed in the context of Deshaun Watson's disciplinary hearing, owners are held to a higher standard. I'm truncating and paraphrasing. But by adding that gratuitous language in there that owners are held to a higher standard, everything you do or don't do as it relates to a team becomes fair game when the NFLPA is defending players under this revamped personal conduct policy. So how do you avoid it? You just look the other way, where you don't talk about it publicly. You just downplay it as much as you can. And I think that's what they're going to do. So technically, should the NFL investigate the Texans? Absolutely. Absolutely they should. Why shouldn't they? And frankly, if I'm representing Deshaun Watson's interests as we wait for Judge Sue L. Robinson to issue a decision on whether and to what extent he's going to be suspended, maybe I submit a supplemental letter to her saying, hey, if the Texans have settled these 30 claims and the league isn't even looking into it, that's just all the more reason for the league to not have grounds to impose a significant suspension on Deshaun Watson. Now, one last point. What impact does this have on Deshaun Watson? Because it may be one of those, be careful what you wish for. If Deshaun Watson starts arguing the Texans should be investigated for how they mishandled the allegation that I engaged in serious misconduct, I mean, you kind of want to downplay that if you're Watson. And this is on the surface good news for Watson because it ends the possibility of him getting dragged into the cases that were and would be filed against the Texans. No deposition, no trial testimony. He's got his 4 cases left. And based upon the fact that the Texans settled with 30 and there were 24 cases filed against Watson, there are 6 more out there who potentially could sue him. So 4 existing, 6 potential. That's it. Once those are done, they're done. He doesn't have to worry about getting dragged into the lawsuits against the Houston Texans. That's good news. Now, is there bad news? Well, these settlements, they help fund the litigation against him. That's just money that pays expenses that may cause the plaintiffs to say, hey, look, I got some compensation. I'm willing to roll the dice and go to trial and say no to whatever Deshaun Watson offers, unless he really offers a lot. The price goes up to get the plaintiffs now, who are still remaining against Deshaun Watson, to take a deal. So that could impact him in a negative way. But the best news, I think, is the fact that he doesn't have to worry about this thing continuing to hang over him, even if he settles all of his claims. He doesn't have to worry about the claims against the Texans. And I think from the NFL's perspective, that's good news too. They just want this to end. They just want it to go away. They want to be able to move on. And one of the key pieces would be, and was, how involved the Texans would be in litigation against them. So that's gone. The cases remain against Deshaun Watson, 4, maybe 6 new ones between now and the middle of March, and ultimately whatever Judge Robinson decides. Remember, week of July 25, that's kind of when I'm waiting and watching and wondering whether or not she'll be issuing her decision. It could come at any time, but I think next week is the week for it to land. With that possibility, Friday, middle of the afternoon, late afternoon, just like when the Texans made it known that they had settled their 30 claims, maybe that's when Judge Robinson drops her decision. Okay, what also happened on Friday afternoon, the closing of the window on signing franchise tag players to long-term deals, multi-year deals. You can still sign an unsigned franchise tag player to a 1-year deal for any terms you want to put in there. More money, a promise not to franchise tag him next year, whatever it may be. And 2 of the franchise tag players have yet to sign: Orlando Brown of the Chiefs and Jesse Bates of the Bengals. I'm going to talk about both of them in a second. For now, though, general observation on franchise tags. And this is what we learned from the Kirk Cousins and Trumaine Johnson experience in 2018. We think about Kirk Cousins, who went 2 years under the tag with Washington before becoming a free agent. The way that the tag formula is structured, it's going to be highly unlikely for any team to ever tag a guy 3 times, regardless of whether or not it's a quarterback or a non-quarterback. You're either going to have a 44% increase in your second franchise tag, which becomes a ridiculously obscene number, or for a non-quarterback, you're getting quarterback money for your third franchise tag. So 3 tags will not happen. And it was both Cousins and Trumaine Johnson, who was a Rams defensive back at the time, who made their way to the open market by just going year to year under the tag for 2 seasons. Now, that doesn't sound like much. And for a quarterback, it's not much. Why? Because the rules are set up for you to be healthy. You don't get injured the way that other players do. For a running back, 2 years is an eternity. For the players who are closer to the action and who are involved in more contact and thus more opportunities to get injured, that 2 years is a lifetime. But that's your way to get to unrestricted free agency. And for each of these 4 players, Mike Gesicki of the Dolphins, Dalton Schultz of the Cowboys, Orlando Brown of the Chiefs, and Jesse Bates of the Bengals, this is year 1. Next year is year 2. And before we even get to that, the teams have to decide whether or not to give them a 20% increase on their 2022 salary or let them become free agents. But if they do it next year, then by 2024, that's when they all become free agents. The risk they're taking is they suffer a catastrophic injury between now and then, or they just have an accumulation of stuff that makes them not as attractive as they would have been if they had been free agents at the start of this year's cycle. As it relates to Bates, he reportedly has no intention to play under the franchise tag this year. Well, I mean, what does that really mean? He's not going to play at all? He doesn't have to. There's no financial impact in not playing other than giving up the $12.9 million that you would make in guaranteed salary. You don't get fined for not showing up for camp. You don't get fined for anything, but if you fail to show up by week 1, you start losing those game checks that add up to $12.9 million for 1 year. Would he really do it? Some people are suggesting he could be traded. Here's the downside of a trade. Whoever trades for him steps into the Bengals' shoes. They can't sign him to a long-term deal. He would sign his tender and he would be traded to another team. Fine. But still $12.9 million. Now, they could offer to pay him more. They could say, we're not going to tag you in 2023. But why are we giving up anything for a 1-year rental? with Jesse Bates. Makes no sense. It's harder to trade a guy if the team that's acquiring him can't sign him to a long-term deal. So I don't know how this plays out with Bates, but I assume he shows up at some point. Now, there's a practical deadline, and it gets a little dicey, and it's one of those things that we relearn it, and then we know it, and then we forget. I think it happened with Logan Mankins years ago. There's a deadline where you need to show up, but then there's the deadline where if you don't show up by then, the team can play hardball with you and make it harder for you to get credit for this year. So you get to the 20% raise next year under year 2 of the tag. We'll get into that if it looks like Jesse Bates isn't going to show up. I think he will for week 1. I think he's just got to process it and understand. And it's $12.9 million. Yes, it's short of the top of the market for safeties, but it's $12.9 million, fully guaranteed, with the only risk for now being that the Bengals could say we rescind it, and then he becomes a free agent, maybe at a time where we'll have a hard time getting $12.9 million for 2022 if all the money's been spent under other budgets and if all the depth charts are set with other teams. Now, I want to talk about Orlando Brown. And I've seen the reporting, and we need to be clear about this. This comes from the ESPN story. The Chiefs' final offer to Brown was a 6-year, $139 million deal. It included a $30.25 million signing bonus and $95 million in the first 5 years of the contract. None of that matters if it's not guaranteed. And this is the traditional formula for a franchise tag player. And Brown was due to make $16.662 million this year and still is due to make that under the franchise tag. All right. So you take 16.662. You multiply it by 1.2. Next year, he would have gotten and would get, if he's tagged, $19.994 million under year 2 of the tag. Let me add these, 16.662. So 2 years of the tag, he's due to make $36.65 million. The standard practice that is developed under the franchise tag is, unless you're giving the guy what he's going to make the next 2 years, fully guaranteed at signing, he's got no reason to sign that deal. Because if you don't do that, he should just say, I'll just go year to year. I'll go year to year. And if you give him, in the case of Orlando Brown, $36.65 million, fully guaranteed over the next 2 years, what you're doing is you're taking away the injury risk from him, the risk of ineffectiveness, the risk that they wouldn't tag him next year. You're basically saying, all right, we tagged you this year. Let's just assume we tag you next year and we'll give you that money now, fully guaranteed. And then after that, it becomes year to year. Now, the way things are going, especially with the Deshaun Watson contract, Brown may want guarantees beyond year 2. But this idea that it was $95 million over the first 5 years, that doesn't matter. What matters is what is fully guaranteed at signing. And a penny less than $36.65 million, Orlando Brown has no reason to take that deal. Jesse Bates, same idea, 12.9 plus a 20% raise, a penny less than the first 2 years of the tag, he's got no reason to take it. And the reporting was that the Bengals were offering maybe $4 million more guaranteed than what he was due to make this year. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Go year to year and become an unrestricted free agent. And for Orlando Brown, I mean, look at Trent Williams playing deep into his 30s. You know, Walter Jones did this years ago with the Seahawks. Tagged once, sat out all of training camp, all of the preseason, showed up, had a great year. Tagged twice, did it again. Tagged a third time, as the case may be, easier for him to say, did it again. And they actually changed the rule in part because of Walter Jones, because it was, you get your tag, year 2, you get a 20% raise, year 3, you get a 20% raise. And then year 4, he signed a long-term deal. Now year 3, it spikes to that number that is impractical for the team, either a 44% raise or quarterback money. So that's all Orlando Brown has to do. That's it. Play this year, play next year, unrestricted free agent, because they're not going to give him the quarterback tag. They're not. It's unprecedented, and it would be what, 35 million by then, 40 million by then, and it's not just the quarterback tag. I think it becomes, because they calculate the tags differently than they used to. It becomes the way they used to calculate the franchise tag. The 5 highest cap numbers at the quarterback position in the prior year. They use a 5-year average now as to how much the 5 highest paid players at the position consumed under the salary cap, whatever that percentage is, averaged out over 5 years. And that's one of the problems we have here too. The safety cap number of 12.9, or tag number, far below the top of the market. The tight end franchise tag number, far below the top of the market. So this device that was put in the 2011 CBA keeps those franchise tag numbers lower, makes a team more willing to use the tag, and makes it harder to get that long-term deal. So bottom line, I think all 4 of the guys who were tagged are going to be playing for their teams this year. The question becomes, what happens next year? And will we see Orlando Brown or any of the others go 2 years under the tag and then out the door? All right, before we go out the door, let me see what questions we have. I took a quick look through them. Sometimes I do them without checking. Sometimes I just I pick a few ahead of time. And then the reality that more will be posted between the last time I looked at them and the time I get to them. And one of these days I'm going to get to it. Here we are. All right. Since I've already violated my wife's HIPAA rights, I'll answer this first question from PFTPM Posse. How is Mrs. PFT doing in her COVID recovery? Anybody else in the household end up contracting it? If so, how was it? Asking because my wife and I still haven't contracted it. Jill tested positive 15 days ago. She was having symptoms. A Saturday night, she tested negative, but she had symptoms. She said, I wouldn't have even tested. Like, they were so mild, but we have the test in the house. She was just curious. Sunday night, she ended up being positive. And her parents both got it. Her brother got it. Her nephew got it. And, she blames herself for it. It's like, it's everywhere right now. This BA.5 subvariant is everywhere. You can't blame yourself for it. Everybody's getting it. I didn't get it. My son didn't get it. We both tested ourselves on Saturday morning because we went to visit our little nephew in Columbus. My wife didn't go just in case. And I asked things everywhere. I made the point earlier today that the COVID protocols are gone and they're likely not coming back. Everybody's moved on. It's harder and harder to follow any type of protocol when it just seems like the world is back to normal. But the reality is this BA.5 subvariant is making people sick. It is causing some lingering illness. It just depends on who you are. But as of right now, everybody's fine. My father-in-law was in the hospital for a couple of days because he's got other health issues, but he's home. He's fine. My mother-in-law is fine. Everybody else is fine, but it's out there. It isn't gone yet. And I'm heading to Canton in 15 days for a couple of days in connection with the Hall of Fame game. So I'm properly vaccinated, had my second boost a few weeks ago. It kicked my ass for a couple of days. And, at some point you just have to trust that. And look, the people who are vaccinated are not suffering serious injury or worse during these ongoing outbreaks and mutations and variations. So you just have to trust that your protection will work. And then it becomes no different than the colds and the flus that we otherwise have gotten over the years. All right, what else do we have here? PFTP and Posse, a lot of great questions here, but I can't let you monopolize the conversation. We got the complaint last week and only answer questions from 6 different accounts. So I'm going to scroll through the rest of yours. Sorry. Corey Joskowitz, what's the Monday to Friday co-host schedule for PFT Live, PFTPM, or PFTOT? When do we get to see Chris Sims, Miles Simmons, Peter King, NFL stream? Well, Sims will be back on Monday, and I don't know what the full season arrangement's going to be because Sims does the Sunday night post-game show on Peacock. So last year we had Golick every Monday. These are things that, even though it's my show, these are things that we work in concert to figure out the best plan for everybody. I'd like to have Chris on Mondays, but he would sleep like 2 hours after all day Sunday doing Football Night in America, doing the post-game show on Peacock, and then turning it around and doing PFT Live. That's probably a little more than is healthy for him, even though he's a lot younger than me. All right, what else do we have here? Rich Cheney. What kind of info is the most important from the opening of camps? Holdouts and hold-ins, rookie performance, injury status, coaching style, and depth charts. Feels like very few of the narratives from August survive into September. The most important thing is injury. That's the most important thing. Get your team through training camp in the preseason as healthy as possible. Yeah, you want to get your offense and defense installed. Yeah, you want to be ready for week 1. You want to do as much as you can to develop your players. You hope your rookies will pass the smell test and you don't end up cutting half of them when you trim from 90 to 53. But job number one, keep your guys healthy. You want them to be ready, but you want them to be healthy when the regular season rolls around. We know guys are going to get injured. That's the one reality that makes moot so much of what we talk about from February until August. Who's going to be good? Who's not going to be good? Who's going to contend? Who's not going to contend? Well, once you start plucking key players off of starting lineups because they're injured, that tends to impact everything. And it changes just like that. And the amazing part of it is, and it just shows you the power of the NFL, once a key player is out for the year, Ben Roethlisberger, 2019 with the elbow injury, week 2, he's gone. Out of sight, out of mind. Just gone. Just gone. That's it. The train keeps moving without the people who have fallen off because the games keep coming. Monday night, Thursday night, all day Sunday, Monday night, Thursday night, all day Sunday. Somebody's putting that uniform on. Somebody's going out there and playing the game. We're watching the games. Can't worry about the guys who aren't there. So, and look, the best teams can go next man up, can recover from the injuries. That mindset in New England that we make no excuses for injuries. We expect the next man up to perform, and we expect to go forward. Look, the Titans mastered that last year. That's why Mike Vrabel was coach of the year. 90-plus guys on the roster throughout the course of the regular season, all those changes, all those injuries, and they just kept going. That's the challenge. And that's where the best coaches really prove themselves. Because it's easy, relatively speaking, to have a playoff season if your 11 ideal starters on offense and defense are healthy every week of the year. The challenge comes when guys start getting injured. Do your young players step up, especially if you're the Rams and you're so top heavy on the salary cap and you put so much emphasis on young players, lowly drafted or not drafted at all, stepping in. Can you get it done in those situations? That's going to be one of the challenges. And some teams are going to have it more than others. Some teams are going to get lucky. Some teams have better strength and conditioning programs. Look, there's no way to get granular with what one team is doing versus another team. I remember back when Chip Kelly was coach of the Eagles, we thought the smoothies were going to be the magic elixir to keep guys healthy. It's stretching, it's flexibility, it's weight training the right way, it's pliability for Tom Brady. It's all sorts of things that keep guys healthy. And anytime I see a team have injury issues multiple years in a row, I start wondering, what are they doing differently, i.e. worse than other teams? Because there's only so much bad luck you can have. And we see guys every week. When you're watching all the games at once, the way guys get their bodies pretzeled around and so many of them jump up and keep going, the training staff, the strength and conditioning staff have a lot to do with it. And yes, you're going to have some unlucky breaks, but you're also going to have moments that are influenced by whether or not your guys are truly prepared to keep going. But that's the key. Who stays healthy in training camp, preseason, and who's ready to go week 1, and then who sustains it as week 1 becomes the rest of the regular season. All right, let's see what else we have here. This is a question that dovetails with something that we addressed earlier. Ryan Dupree, did Goodell screw up when he said teams can't investigate themselves? It sure looks like the NFL would prefer to let some teams investigate themselves when it suits the league. And when it suits the league is the key, because the league does whatever suits its interests in that moment. And in the moment when Roger Goodell said we can't let a team investigate itself, it suited the league's interest to push back against the idea that Daniel Snyder would be allowed to go hire his own lawyer to investigate allegations against him. But look at the Raiders. They investigated themselves after a flurry of workplace complaints. The league didn't investigate the Raiders. The league apparently isn't investigating the Texans. If they are, they aren't saying so. And the Cowboys voyeurism scandal from 2015. No indication or reason to think that the league investigated it then, and the league definitely isn't investigating it now. So, it's whatever the league thinks it needs to do to put out whatever fire is on its doorstep. That flaming bag with a secret ingredient that the kid down the street tucked into it before you lit it. What do we need to do? How big of a shoe do we need to use here? Can we use a hose? Do we stomp it out? What do we do? Do we throw sand on it? What do we do? They decide case by case what they need to do to deal with that situation to keep it from becoming a bigger deal. And that's ultimately what they're trying to do here. Look, this whole apparatus is about PR. The personal conduct policy is a product of the league's PR interest. What does it take to get maximum people to watch our games? And what does it take to avoid having too many people say, I'm not watching those games. I don't like how they handled this issue. I'm out. I don't feel good about myself because of the scoundrels who are employed by the teams or the scoundrels who own the teams. The challenge, though, is to tread lightly when it comes to the potential scoundrels who own the team, because they are the ones who hire and pay the commissioner. So it's all driven by what they think the public reaction will be. And if they can kind of tuck awkward issues out of view, if nobody really focuses on it, makes it a big deal, that's a win for the NFL. Football God. Which dominoes need to fall the Seahawks' way to sneak into the playoffs? I think they can get in. I think they're going to be better than people expect. NFC, as I mentioned earlier, is wide open. And I think the Seahawks want to get back to that formula of defense, running game. Look, they were reluctant to adjust their offensive system to make it rotate around and go through Russell Wilson. And I think Pete Carroll would love nothing more than to take Russell Wilson's backup, Geno Smith, and give him all the reps and get him ready and have a team that's as competitive as it was with Russell Wilson. So I think that look, they need to stay healthy. They need their running backs to produce and stay healthy. They were spoiled by Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn Lynch could always keep going no matter what. They've had a hard time having healthy running backs since then. They have Rashad Penny back. He had a great end of the season, but he had injury issues. Chris Carson may be gone for good. They need the running backs. They need someone to step up and really make that offense go. And that opens up the passing game. They've got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. They need to coach up the guys on defense. That competition everywhere mindset needs to take root and develop kind of a tough, hard-nosed defense like they had. I think they can be better than they are expected to be. There's a weird vibe about the Seahawks. A lot of people expect them to not be very good. I have a feeling that Pete Carroll is going to have a trick or two up his sleeves. All right. I should probably – there's an interesting question from Neil Rollins about the Bengals wearing their black and white striped uniform with the white helmet, that it's going to somehow create confusion with the referees. I'd never really thought of that, and I'd still like to think that a football player in full body armor in black and white stripes that aren't straight vertical stripes will be distinguishable from a referee. But it is kind of a strange idea that the color impact, and should you have, in a situation like that, different colored shirts for the referees like we see in soccer matches. I'd never thought of that before. I doubt that it's going to be an issue, but that's interesting. All right. Great show. Maybe. I'll leave it for you to decide. Great questions. As always, we are 7 days away from the return of PFT Live. Can't wait for next Monday. But until then, I was 4 for 5 last week with PFTOT. I assume this week, because camps will be opening and there will be news, I'm going to try to wrap this week up 5 for 5. PFTOT every day. We'll see if I can pull it off. So far, 1 for 1. Tune in tomorrow to see if we go 2 for 2. And check us out all day long at ProFootballTalk.com. Thanks as always for some of your time. See you again tomorrow.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.